You're listening to the Ask Drone U podcast. You ask, we answer your drone questions. Whether you're here to turn your passion into profit or you simply fly for fun, we're a community of learners and teachers who aspire to achieve greatness. We are
Drone U.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Ask Drone U, here with a guest that I'm really excited to spend some time with. And let's just hop right in. And I'm going to introduce our guest here. You can see his name on the screen, I believe. Mr. Yoshi Schechter. Did I say that correctly? Forgive me if not.
Schechter, yes.
Schechter, okay.
Rhymes with Hector, yeah.
Yeah.
Spectre in some cases.
Another word comes to mind, but I'm not going to say it. So, anyways, probably wouldn't be the first time you've heard it. Anyways, we're excited to talk to Yoshi and
really excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate you taking the time. We're going to be able to get into some of the experiences that you've had and some of the really interesting things that you've been doing with drones over the last few years. And I think that people are going to appreciate the fact that you're doing what I would consider to be more complex missions than probably most people. I'm pretty confident actually in that statement, but we'll dig into that a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. And so anyways,
a warm up, I was listening to one of your back podcasts, and you and Paul went off for like 20 minutes just saying how you need to, have that warm up time and talk about, don't jump right into the subject matter. So I was looking forward to the schmooze here, Rob.
Well, and then we get the comments of, I wish you guys would just get to the point, and then people come into the comments. The podcast actually starts at minute 8:42. You're welcome, really helpful stuff like that. So if anybody is listening or watching and you're one of those, my apologies. I've become a little cynical after having done over 1,500 of these, probably more.
Wow.
But, yeah. Well, I think what we'll do is we'll lace that fluff throughout.
Okay.
And listen to some stories that I'm sure you have. But
I can be very fluffy. I can be fluffy.
No comment. We're going to move right past that. Let me just do a quick introduction. Yoshi's been an entrepreneurial participant, shall we, for quite a while. I think you've exited a business or two, which is really, really cool. Degreed in design. So maybe you can get into that a little bit. Let's see. Web-based payroll application. So that's one of the companies that you started and exited, right? That's
correct.
I would guess that if you said to people, you got like 3 guesses as to what Yoshi's previous company was. Payroll processing probably would not have been one of those guesses.
Probably not. No, it was a really fluky way we got into that too. But I was a little bit of a hacker, and I hacked these Verifone. I don't know if you remember the Verifone 330. It was like there's zillions of them out there, and it was a credit card machine, and we actually hacked them and turned them into time clocks. And customers were having their employees clock in on these things, and then it was downloading to us, and they were like, "Can you please do our payroll? The company we're using is so bad at it, and you guys just seem to." So yeah, that's how that happened.
That's cool. Yeah, they say starting a business should be based on solving some problem. Sounds like you were doing that, and you didn't even know it.
I didn't. Right? I had no idea.
Yeah.
I just thought it was cool.
Yeah, exactly. Even better. That just means you were having more fun. But anyways, continuing on here, passion for technology, gadgets, led you to drones. That is a common theme, I think, for people that have been in the drone industry for a while or just getting started. That continues to draw people in. And then you adapted your interest into a drone-based cleaning and painting system, which we can talk a little bit more about, and then specializing in aerial inspections, which I think probably that experience would lead into some of the more complex missions that you're working on, including thermography-based missions and so forth.
Right.
And then oil and gas and energy sectors. That is, I would say it's still, and maybe this is ignorance on my part, which I don't like to admit, but it happens. Getting into the oil and gas industry and using drones for that. I would say it's a fairly young industry in that space.
It's a whole different animal. well too. They seem to come at it from manned aviation and heavy on safety, which we all should be, but of course,
sure,
extremely careful when you're around gas and
100%
electrical and a combination thereof. So
no, absolutely. I mean, that's what is it? Is it Mike Rowe? He says, and I appreciate this. Does you know who Mike Rowe is? He was the Dirty Jobs guy.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah. And so he's had this thing about he's kind of gotten tired of the whole safety first mantra, and so he says safety third. And he explains why, but it makes a lot of sense. I won't go into it now, but my point is, I think in oil and gas, in that whole energy sector, probably safety first is apropos. So we'll leave it at that.
A lot of we can dive into this a bit more too. There's a lot of barriers to entry to the oil and gas world. When they say it's a good old boy connection, it really, really is. Yeah. And then you have to pay. So not only do you have to know somebody, but you got to also have all of your insurances in place and the very sophisticated sensors that are required. And it's not for the faint-hearted. We sort of, again, got into it in a fluky way. During COVID, we were doing drone cleaning and waiting for parts and pieces, supply chain. I don't want to rehash all that pain. But ultimately, we studied for our thermography certification and realized rather quickly that there's not a lot of independent thermographers out there, and started getting inquiries from oil and gas companies or service providers for oil and gas companies. And that's been kind of a theme in our business too, like working our way to the source client through other DSPs, flying for other companies that we kind of cut our teeth on. And I know you guys talk about this a lot, go out there and learn how to do it. And then you can maybe figure out that you have a knack for it.
Absolutely.
And it's been a good model because we've been able to get trained, not always in the best way, but at least, have some sort of somebody that's got some experience to sort of hold our hand, as opposed to like winning a contract and then figuring out how to do it. That's always a dangerous proposition. So,
and it happens a lot in the drone industry, particularly in the earlier days, right? I mean, we've been around 10, 11 years now. And in the beginning of any industry, that kind of is the way it has to be.
Oh, I mean, I can't tell you how many times, like when somebody said, do you know how to, capture? And it was never yes or no. It was like, you kidding?
Right. Don't you?
Yeah, who doesn't?
Right, exactly.
Not really saying yes or no. You're just
yeah.
But that's how you do it, and fortunately, we did it right most of the time and got it right and learned on the job.
Sure.
It was an expensive lesson to get there, but that's if you're serious about it, it's an investment. And it's an investment of time and effort and training. And you guys do a great job with some of the training skills too. So you can plug yourself here if insert plug here, because the Drone U is really like a place to learn about how to do a telecom collection or something. It's
sure.
Where else can you go except on the job? So kudos to you guys for that stuff. And
I appreciate that.
That is definitely a referral code or something from you. That's what I really should do. But, we'll talk about it.
Yes, we will. We'll get to that along with some other things. But probably one of the longest introductions in podcasting history, but it worked. And I also want to say, we haven't mentioned it yet. It's on the screen that Yoshi is one of the, I assume you're one of the founders of Alamo Airborne.
Yes.
Alamo Airborne. Okay.
I'm it. I'm the guy, but we've grown pretty good since. Yeah.
Well, the reason I thought you were, but you mentioned that you're the senior business director, and I can actually appreciate that, because here at Drone U, and I really don't want this to be about talking about me. I'll just say this one thing. I never know what title to use. We're relatively small, and we're still kind of we pitch in and help each other and do different things. And so titles at a company like this, and probably like yours, they're not quite meaningless, but borderline. We're all just about getting stuff done. I guess you're kind of in that.
And you can see I did not put my title up there. I am the senior business director. It's mostly for when we're responding to bids or talking to somebody or LinkedIn profile. I wear a zillion hats. I am the HR guy. I'm the payroll guy. I'm director of finance.
Right. Exactly.
Our corporate structure is an LLC, so we don't we're not an Inc., so we don't particularly have like C-level guys, or at least we don't call it. We're partners. Yeah. My partner is Alan Levy. He's all things logistics. His background is in construction and managing people, and really good at it, and managing calendars. There's so many moving parts in this industry, and we get most of the work we get. It's like a call from a customer, and they're like, "Oh, we've got 1,500 cell towers that we need inspected. Can you guys mobilize by Monday?" What's the shot list? Like, what's the deliverable? Like, where are they?
Yeah.
Well, we don't have any of that yet. So you don't actually have a PO in hand from your customer. True.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, it's a lot of that. And,
well, we'll come back to that as well. But before we get too far into those kinds of details, and you kind of started to do so, but tell us a little bit more about Alamo Airborne, how it started, and then kind of where it's come from the beginnings to where you are now. Let's start with that.
Okay. I'll give you a little history. You asked me about my degree. Also, I have a degree in design and architecture, and it's actually an interesting degree to hold. Unlike a science degree or a business degree where there's sort of set expectations from your instructors of what the answers should be, like how, what does general accounting practices look like? Or, like these things that are sort of obvious or in the realm of what's considered known. Design is all about sales, and you have to tell somebody, for example, I like this gray couch. Why do I like this gray couch? Well, gray represents the color of the sky. And so there's a lot of like pitching that you do in design to sell your product or whatever it is, your building or your layout or whatever it happens to be. So I learned a lot about sales, and
sounds almost like inadvertently a little bit, but carry on.
I was, I'm interested in color theory, but like that's not exactly what I was after in life, but the whole sort of sales side of it appealed to me, and that's why I pursued that. And it's served me well because I've followed up after architecture school with sales training and learned some of these goofy things that I remember till today, like feel, felt, found. I don't know if you know that one.
I don't know that one.
Rob,
I know form follows function.
Rob, I know how you feel. I used to feel that way, but I found that, and you can do it with every scenario, and that's just like a little goofy sales technique. And I've internalized it, so I don't say it like that anymore, obviously, but it's those sort of things. And so it served me well throughout my my careers in various industries. I've done a few different things. The sales techniques that I've used all through every business that I've ever had. And the truth is, every business is really the same thing. You have a different widget that you're selling. And right now it's drone services and piloting services, inspection services, data collection, whatever you want to call it. It's just another widget. Guess what? At the end of the day, and Rob, you and I have talked about this, we have accounting to do, and we have HR to do, and we've got people to manage, and, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's, every business is really the same. It's just what is the product that you're selling. Now, that being said, don't tell my wife, but I play with gadgets all day, and then I camp out at night. I mean, I would do that for free. Okay.
Let's hope your clients don't see this.
So no, there's a lot of fun to this business, and it's studying.
Agreed.
My background in design, I did study photography in college as well, so I understand ISOs and f-stops and apertures, and that helps. And then being a certified thermographer also is pretty important to understanding what you're looking at and capturing.
Can we stop there just so I don't forget to come back to it? But briefly, the thermographer aspect, I don't think there's a lot of people that are certified in that, relatively speaking. How valuable is that to you? How important has it been? How much have you guys used it, et cetera?
It's gotten us a lot of the oil and gas contracts because in certain states, including your home state of New Mexico, you have to be a certified thermographer to capture or to use certain pieces of equipment. I don't know if it's state regulation. I don't really know, but I've been told that like New Mexico, when they were recruiting us from one of the major oil companies, they said, if you're going to fly in New Mexico, you have to have your at least level 1 thermography. So that's been important. It is important also in understanding what you're looking at or what you're capturing. If you're flying over something and you don't recognize a blob as being important, and you're just capturing it, sure, you can take a picture, an image of it, but, are you going to be able to know to tell your customer if there's like really a bad problem? Like some of our SLA or service level agreements with our customers are not just collect the data and upload it at the end of the day. It's collect the data, comma, if you see something really bad, let us know, comma, and then upload at the end of the day. So especially like wind turbine blade inspection, boy, if we see a crack or something, that's super dangerous. We want to make sure we do that. Methane detection, if parts per million are over X, and it kind of varies depending on where and who, there's a policy or a procedure to let our customer know right away that there's a problem here with methane leaking.
Yeah.
Some of the OSHA stuff is pretty funny too, because it's not about repairing it, it's just about identifying the leak. So as long as the leak's identified, they've done their job, and then we come back 2 weeks later and do the inspection again, and it's still leaking.
Well, I guess the first step to recovery is admitting you have a problem. I don't know. It's funny as you describe it. It kind of makes me think of a sonographer. You're having a baby. It's kind of that same thing. I could put one of those on a belly. I don't know what I'm looking at. Right? It's the same kind of thing.
Right.
All right. Anyway, so it's helped in terms of getting to maybe some of those higher echelon jobs.
The thermography that, we're talking about still,
The thermographer, not the sonographer. Are you a sonographer at the closet?
No, just in my spare time.
Right.
It has helped significantly, and it's another stamp. It's something we put on our website, that we're thermographers. And the truth is, every one of our pilots we put them through an internal thermography certification. I know it's not, blessed by the powers that be, but it's blessed by us, and we hold ourselves to a very high standard. So we want to make sure that our guys know what they're looking at, understand what equipment they're using. Thermography is one of the things we do. So it's important. Oil and gas, it's typical thermography when you see the orange or the iron bow or, those sort of red hot or white hot pictures. Those are long wave infrared. In oil and gas, we tend to use medium wave to see the gas clouds and stuff. There's some interesting techniques. When you get good at it, you can use your long wave stuff because an organic material with radioactive sunlight will have a certain reflective quality. And, so you can learn these little sort of tips and tricks to get the most out of your equipment.
But it can get technical quick, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So we probably should stay clear of getting too technical, or we'll lose a bunch of people, maybe even me.
Yeah. So we use
So
we use thermal inspection, we'll call it like an M3T, right? It's a Mavic, DJI Mavic 3 with a thermal payload on it. And we'll use that for doing distribution poles. They want to know if there's a hot spot. They don't really care about what the temperature is. So when we take an image of that, a thermal image of that pole, we'll see that, that line is red hot or whatever color we have, whatever palette we're using. There's a hot spot here. Right. We'll be able to report that immediately to them. So those are the kind of sort of entry level thermography stuff that we would do. And then we get up into, we'll do commercial roofing and stuff, rubber roofs and stuff and those are kind of fun because you do them after hours or before sunset. Because you want like the heat to, if there's water under the roof membrane, and I'm sure you guys have talked about this on your stuff, but the water heats up, the sun goes down, the surface of the roof cools, but that water stays hot. So that's when you can see it with the thermal camera. Similarly, before sunrise, it's the opposite. The water's cool and now the roof is getting warm, so you'll see a cooler area. And those are how you identify leaks and things like that. Cold storage. These are things that are what I would call non-radiometric. Radiometric will put a value to any pixel on your screen of temperature. So it's much more accurate. Like you want to know, that thing is operating at 100 degrees Celsius or whatever the number is.
Sure.
That's sort of advanced stuff. The beginner stuff is just like, wow, it's a different color. Why is it a different color? Because there's a leak in this cold storage building and it's blowing cold air out into,
But the point on that, I think, is that whether it's quote unquote easy stuff or kind of simple stuff, it can still be valuable. It can still be actionable.
Sure.
Right? All the way from the beginning to the end. So my point in saying that, correct me if I'm wrong or let me know if you would agree, but you can be productive and serviceable as a pilot as you're learning because there's value to that sort of beginner level stuff. Does that make sense?
For sure.
Okay. So let's get a little bit more back into Alamo Airborne. And so did you start with just the two of you, Alan and you?
No, it was just me and I had another silent partner. I was doing everything. So let me back up just a tiny bit.
Sure. Tell us who Alamo Airborne is and kind of what your mission is in light of what you're about to say.
Okay. In 2014, I had a friend of mine show up with a Phantom 1 or a 0. Just there wasn't any number. It was just a
0, yeah.
And we were playing with it and it was really cool. And I was like, wow, how can we make money with this thing? And we had this harebrained idea that we were going to paint with a drone, okay? This was kind of like around the time Uber and Lyft and sort of these like, all these other startups that were like, fill in the blank, the Uber of fill in the blank, right? So we were like, we'll be the Uber of, drones. And what is Uber doing that is making them successful? And we were looking at it from an entrepreneurial perspective. And we looked at what industries need help, like where's there intense labor and intense risk? And how can we mitigate that? And we thought, wow, if you could paint with a drone, there's no scaffolding, no ladders. Your cost of insurance from a business owner as a painting business owner would dramatically go down. You can, have one sort of more advanced guy pilot that's flying and painting at the same time instead of having 3 guys up on scaffolding, falling and breaking and paying for health insurance, etc. So we thought, wow, this is a great idea. So we actually 3D printed this clip that we hooked this bucket onto and this airless sprayer. It was a mess, okay?
Hey, that's how these things start, though.
What we did learn is that GPS had a long way to go on accuracy. People don't like when you spray paint their windows. Okay, like you want to spray the wall, that's fine. But when the drone doesn't stop in time, forget about all the propeller wash and all the other gotchas that we have.
Yeah.
But we decided this is a really cool idea, but the world is not ready for this. The technology needs to advance. So we kind of put it on the shelf for a while. And in 2019 or 20, I came across Andrew Asher from Lucid.
Yeah.
You guys,
great guy.
show, yeah, and he's a good dude. He had just won some like college entrepreneurial thing for this great idea that he had. He was going to do. He actually holds the patents, if I'm not mistaken, to drone painting, and that's what got me to him.
To drone painting, I did not ever know that. Not cleaning, not spraying, but
he was smart enough to crawl before he walked, before he ran. And decided, well, we can't quite paint, but we can soft wash. We can splash water up on this building or where, roof or whatever it is. And he had kind of done all the homework and had, a couple of prototypes going. And we were one of his early adapters. And we bought a couple of them, and we bought a big pumper truck, and we were ready to get out there, and this is great. And then COVID hit, and we realized nobody actually Googles clean your roof with a drone.
That's a tough SEO go. You got like 3 people a day. You got to get all of them.
There was other things too. We found that we couldn't just clean the guy's roof. We had to be a cleaning company. We had to clean sidewalks. We had to clean siding. We had to do and it was dealing with a customer. Boy, how can I not sound like a real jerk when I say this? It wasn't dealing with corporate people. It was dealing with homeowners. And they can be difficult. And
the way I like to describe homeowners versus, say, a commercial property owner is it's just more emotional for the homeowner.
Yeah.
And so it leads to different reactions.
Well, and money is weird. $3,000 sounds like a lot to some people. It sounds like not very much to others. And when you're spending somebody else's money in a corporate environment, it's much easier to write a check for $3,000 or whatever the number is than it is out of your personal checking account. So
absolutely,
we tried sort of getting some corporate accounts, and we had a few. We did some apartment complexes, and I mean, we were making money, but we ran into supply chain issues during COVID, and that's when we got certified thermography. And when I say we, I mean me. I was kind of alone. I had some people helping me, but I didn't have like a working partner at the time. And I invited Alan out on a job we had in Houston. We had some huge 5-story apartment complex that we were painting, and he had all these crew guys that he was running in his construction business. So we used those guys on this job, and we just realized that he and I work very well together, and he's really good at that side A, and I'm really good at side B, and so it was a great place to start. And it wasn't like we decided to be partners and then found this out. We sort of found out, and then we decided to be partners. So that was really good.
It's the best way to do it. Friends first, as they say.
And also understanding rapidly that drone cleaning was not for us, and we want to do inspections. And started doing more and more of that. And I'm sure, like most guys that started in this industry, they were on the Droners IO and the Drone Hives and the Fly Guys, and sort of putting their name out there on all these ZiteView or whatever they used to be called, and getting your name out there as a commercial pilot. We did all that too, and found out that was really just a bottom feeding area. God, I don't want to sound like a jerk here, but
You're not saying anything we haven't said on this podcast 100 times before. And look, from my perspective, I will say that there's some value to those. We don't need to get into what that is, but I hear you, and I think the community hears you as well.
I learned a lot there, and I didn't feel bad learning on somebody else's. I almost said dime, but it's more like 2 cents.
Yeah. Truth be told. So you started
I didn't
doing,
make any money doing that, but I got plenty of good experience and
which is
and
valuable, which is very
met some
valuable.
other pilots, which have been associates throughout our career and stuff like that. We decided that we were going to focus on infrastructure inspection and get away from anything that had to do with sort of like real estate or we don't even really focus. When I say focus, we don't focus on going after like mapping jobs. We get them, but that's not what we're after. We basically have 4 verticals right now that we don't want to put our eggs in any one basket. We like to spread it around.
Smart.
Oil and gas, we like that. And I'm gonna tell you the 4, and then I'm gonna go back through and talk about each one. Oil and gas.
Okay.
What we call renewables, which is wind and solar, transmission and distribution, and telecom.
Okay. When you say transmission and distribution, you're talking utilities, electric.
Yeah, let me kind of go back through each one because they're all sort of unique and they're all diverse. And within each of those, we sort of have a niche that we sort of follow as well. So oil and gas, there's a lot going on there. Like when you say, I fly for an oil and gas company, that could mean a zillion things, right? Pipeline inspections, methane detections, which are mandated by OSHA or at least recommended. They're building new pads, so they want orthos or constructions or photogrammetry stuff. There's even we've done submersible stuff in fracking pools and stuff, like crazy things. Like there's a lot going on there. Again, I think I mentioned earlier, they're coming at it from sort of a manned aviation perspective because that's what they've historically used. So they understand it. They still use a lot of helicopters to get to their rigs out in the Gulf or offshore, and they have a lot of money. And interestingly, they're probably the most spendthrift customers that we have. They're the ones that beat us up on price more than anybody else. And
that's interesting.
It's like they measure their profits in the billions. It's never enough.
I just as a business aside, I wonder if I'm sorry to interrupt you. It just made me think about because ultimately their net margins are pretty low. It's all volume, right? And I wonder if it's just because of that. It's kind of formed them into that kind of mode of thinking, but it's probably neither here nor there. Just a kind of interesting
we've
aside.
Kind of modeled our pricing structure that way too. Like somebody calls me up and says, "Hey Yoshi, I've got 3 cell towers in wherever, Sheboygan, Wisconsin." No offense, Sheboygan. But
never been.
How can I get there? I've got to so I have to look at that as like, okay, what's my day rate? What's my travel? How long is that going to take for me to do that? It's a day in, a day out. 3 doesn't make sense. Now, if you give me 300 in Sheboygan, I can do that. And I can probably do it for 1/10 the price that I can do 3 of them for.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's scale. It's like the oil companies. They work on scale. So as do we. So oil and gas, we focus on methane detection at the moment. Okay. But because getting in with those customers is challenging, the insurance requirements, the who is so important there. It's
huge.
Joining industry groups that are sort of tangential to the drone world. So last week I went to a helicopter safety meeting in New Orleans. Was it worthwhile? I mean, the content of the meeting was interesting, but the people I met were, potential customers and potential partners. So it was drone companies and oil and gas companies. So I said earlier, also we've flown 4 other companies and we continue to do that, and we don't have a problem doing that. Our price is the same whether we fly for a drone services company or for an oil and gas company. And the way you were talking about the way the oil and gas companies sort of work off of like margins that are just based on volume, we sort of do that too. Like we price it on cost up. Like I'm not trying to say, oh, I need to make oh, that's a rich customer, let me charge him more. We never do that. I look at my cost.
Sure. What
does it cost for me to send a guy out in the field? What does it cost for me to put him up in a hotel? What are the the intangible, the tangible? What are my costs? And then I'll put my profit margin on top of that and say, okay, that I can deal with. Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise known as cost plus. It's a very common pricing strategy.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So the second vertical for you guys.
I think I said renewables, wind and solar. We've been again working through one of our partner companies, and I'll shout out to Harjeet and Andy at Aerodyne. I don't know if you know these guys, but they've been in the industry a long, long time, and they've done a bunch of crazy things. So we started off sort of flying for them, and I think now we're doing most of their North American flights for them.
Okay, and so that's mostly inspection, like looking for cracks, looking for breakdowns and equipment.
In this particular, some of the work we've done in wind, like with Aerodyne, we'll do the data collection. So we'll fly the blades and collect all the pictures, and then we send it to them for the data analysis. And they have their team, and I think they use some AI to look at those imageries and then create a report for the customer.
Are you creating 3D models or just images? What's your
with them,
deliverable for that?
It's simply a report, like an action report.
Like a cell tower report. There's generally no models.
We haven't done too many models of wind turbines. They're not as it's more of like just the inspection, looking at the pictures. Yeah, we've done the data on the backside too. So some customers want the data and they want it in 20 different ways. Some guys want a PDF, some guys want a web interface. So, we've had to adapt to become a little bit of a data company for some of our customers. Sure. But we really try to stay in our lane, which is collection.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You do what you have to do, right? Solar is kind of the same thing. For a long time, solar was a race to the bottom. I mean, there's all those same guys that were on those, weekend warrior websites, I'll call them, like the guys that just want to go out and fly and make a few bucks. I'll make $75 and I'm out there for 8 hours.
But I'm flying a drone.
Yeah. So that's where solar went. And I don't want to lay blame on anybody, but I will blame Raptor Maps because they kind of just made it so easy.
How dare they create great software? Yeah,
but it's not good for me. I need complex.
I understand, and but see, that's actually a really interesting point, Yoshi, because what I see that as is any industry I think goes through this where things kind of level off, and you get to that point where the cream of the crop, if you will, they're going to figure out how to go above and create even greater value for a given vertical or inspection. And not always, that doesn't always mean that opportunity is going to be there, but I would say that in most cases, there are ways to create more value.
Well, in solar, we've done it. Okay. So
there you go.
Raptor Maps has, basically 2 flight patterns. They've got like a comprehensive, and then I forget what they call the other one, but it's a simpler one. Mm-hmm. And even their comprehensive, it's good. I'm not taking anything away from Raptor Maps. They do a great job.
It sounds like you should be thanking Raptor Maps, is what I'm hearing.
Well, we have some solar partners in mostly from Europe that are trying to break into the U.S. market. I can't even tell you how I found them. I'll tell you that I am very heavy on LinkedIn. I've made a ton of contacts there. And LinkedIn seems to be the platform to really connect professionally with, at least in my world, that's where I've made my best connection. So
I think it's true for the industry, by the way.
Yeah, it's pretty good. The drone industry is great on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
so,
I agree.
We've got some European partners that are in the solar software space. In other words, they're doing the analysis. They're finding things that Raptor Maps is not finding. Their severity levels are a little more accurate. so it's sort of like, it's apples to apples, but it's like, an organic Granny Smith versus a, whatever apples you have out there in Colorado.
A Walmart Gala.
Yeah, there you go. So that it's a fine point, but solar's tough, but they're building the crap out of them, and so there's construction flights that we do for them. We like to do the post-construction when they first energize the thing, that QC flights. Those are the ones we like. Yeah. The routine maintenance flights. They seem to be few and far between. I don't know. At least for us, we're not seeing them. So that's renewables. The next vertical, I think I said, was transmission distribution, electrical utilities. Yeah. So that also we've niched ourselves a little bit. We're associate members, or I'm not exactly sure what our status is with NRECA, which is the Rural Electrical Council. So this is like the group that they all subscribe to, the smaller co-op utilities, like, I don't know, Guadalupe Valley or Pike County, or like these sort of smaller, I don't know what you have in there. Well, in Colorado, you got Core, which pretty well runs everything. But
in Colorado, we have, I don't know what Core is. We have Excel, and then the city, at least where I'm at. I don't know about Denver.
We've done some flights before. So what we do there is either transmission, which is sort of a separate animal by itself. Mm-hmm. And transmission is the lines, the big ones that carry the power, the big lattice structures. The truth is, most of the inspections are kind of the same thing, just different sizes, different scales. So a transmission tower, it might be in the middle of, Bureau of Land Management land in the middle of Utah, 50 miles from the nearest campsite. And, so our guys are out there with Starlink, and we're flying around and taking pictures ahead of line, back of line, and getting the whole structure looked at. Mm-hmm. And these are also usually quality control flights. Distribution is more like what you see your wood poles around, in your cities. And also, where we'll send guys out and they'll take either orbits or multiple pictures and asset taking and finding new ones in the field. We don't find a lot of transmission towers. Those are usually pretty well documented. But utility poles, for some reason, there's zillions of them that we find when we do an inspection. And we like those because we can manage the logistics on those projects. Our customer will say, here's 6,000 poles, go fly them, just get it done. Make sure you take a picture, and we'll use their software. There's different tools. Usually there's an app on your phone that you're, using. A lot of times we'll change the folder name on our DJI remote control to say, okay, here's the asset name, and we'll make the folder that asset name and then go to the next one. Right. A plug here also for our friends at Drone Harmony. I know they've done a bunch of different things. I don't know if you know those guys, but we were on a project with them a couple of months ago. They've developed this really cool, it's almost like a virtual VO. And it'll take you to the next asset and say, okay, here's your next shot, here's your next shot, here's your next shot, here's your next shot. We had so much success with that, and it's really a great tool. So plug to. Yeah, I've seen they're doing some really cool stuff. I don't know. Yeah, we'll send them a bill. Okay, cool. Free advertising. So that's vertical 3, transmission distribution. Substations are a little more complicated. What we do with the data on that is we'll either farm it out, because a lot of these co-ops, this is interesting, when we find an anomaly or a problem, they actually have to fix that within like 2 or 3 weeks. It kind of depends on the state. But a lot of times, so it's a double-edged sword. We don't want to work too fast, because then they're like, whoa, slow down. But we want the work. So it's, we want the work. We don't want to find too many problems, because then it makes more work for these guys. It's interesting how it rolls downhill. That's a quandary. Yeah. All right. And the fourth vertical. What's the fourth is telecom. And so there's a bunch of different stuff going on there. everything from automated flights with a tool like VHive, which is a flight program that literally you just change batteries. You hit go. Yeah. It already knows where the tower. You pick the top of the tower, the center of the tower, and you stand back and change batteries. And it'll
battery babysitting.
Yeah, and it uses RTK sometimes. Sometimes we've done them with like our Mavic 2 Pros. Those seem to work pretty good.
Yeah.
But the Mavic 3E with RTK seems to be the go-to bird these days, unless you're a China hater. Just
yeah. Well,
we'll talk about that in a minute. But
I think you could be a China hater and still love DJI. Yeah, but I don't want to go too
maybe so.
We're all confused.
But telecom's interesting because we do manual flights too, where we'll fly and do point of interest or orbits around the arrays. We do them where we go vertical sometimes, and they want the cable run, but we grab the whole image that way. There's different processing models on the back of telecom that I'm sure you're aware of. And like some of them are more forgiving than others. We've noticed like the Bentley back end is very forgiving and does a really good job with less pictures.
Interesting.
So,
well, I mean, you probably get what you pay for with Bentley because they're a pretty penny, but they do great stuff.
And again, we try to stay in our lane. So we're just like, we just want to be data collectors. We don't really want to get into the data business. We do it when we have to. And it's not always fun. It's just out of our comfort zone. Sometimes, I mean, a lot of times there's tools that make it really simple, but a lot of times not.
It can bog you down if you're not careful, and that can happen quick.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Let's transition a little bit. That's interesting. I mean, thank you for that detailed explanation of the different verticals. I think that's probably helpful to people to get a little bit more insight into some of those, maybe a level down on some of those. I want to make sure that we hit the fact that you're one of the few, certainly that we're aware of, that is hiring drone pilots as W-2 employees. You have avoided the contractor model. Talk a little bit about that, kind of the strategy, the philosophy, and how that's worked.
Okay. So we talked a little bit earlier in the podcast here about these sort of bottom feeder sites, not to put anybody down or anything, but those are the sites where you sign up and you look for gigs on this site. There's a lot of good pilots out there. And a lot of them are stuck thinking that that's the only way to go if they want to maintain their independence.
Yeah.
I don't disagree, but we're trying to change that. And we give our guys a very, very long leash. We compensate them based on production, but we don't tolerate low production. Okay. So what we've done is instead of paying our guys like a 1099, we've found that if these guys are actually W-2 employees and gals, that they take ownership of the project and mission a whole lot more than if they're just 1099ing. If they're 1099 and you go, I'm going to pay you $200 to go fly that asset, whatever it is, that pole. And they finish it and they go, great, I made $200, and then they go home.
Yeah.
We hire a lot of guys with military veterans that understand mission. That's our big push, because we don't want the jobs that's one pole. I can go fly that myself. I don't need a business to do that. I can, our jobs are thousands of assets that need to be inspected. And I need to say, Mr. Pilot, Mrs. Pilot, go and grab these 5,000 assets. Our deadline is December 1. You can schedule yourself if you want to. You want to work 2 weeks, take 3 days off. You have a dentist appointment here, doctor. I don't care. You've got till December 1. I need all 5,000 of those inspected. We're big on communication, but we're big on mission. Okay, like we don't want to know that there's 3 to do today. We want to know that there's 300 to do tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I don't know if I'm explaining it.
Yeah.
But we found that guys and gals with a military background, we tend to hire those people or give preferential treatment to veterans, not only because they've served our country and we appreciate that, and we live in a free country because of what these people have sacrificed and the people before them. That's only part of the story. The other part of the story is they understand chain of command. It's very important that when we look at a customer's statement of work or scope of work and understand what the deliverable is and why the customer wants it, that's important to our pilot, okay? I would venture to say that most jobs are defined by the guy that writes the scope. And they'll say, okay, I need you to collect pictures of this tower and do an orbit and then go down on the bottom and take pictures of this thing. And here's some sample pictures. And they hand it to you. Here, go. And we fail. Okay, when I say we, any pilot's going to fail with that. What needs to happen is an understanding about what is the customer doing with this. We want to tell our pilots, our customers taking the data that you collect, they're building a digital twin. They're giving it to their engineers to do measurements on. They want to know where they can rectify. So don't skip the middle part. That's what the part they're leasing. You know, like, oh, there's nothing there. I didn't take the picture. You know, no, that's not the point. So. So we try to, emphasize that. And that's when you talk about military training. I mean, I think that's a lot of what it is. It's not just what's the mission goal. It's not just what's the mission. And so we found that our guys that with a military background really, really have that. And
that doesn't mean, I want to make it clear, that doesn't mean that you don't have a place for people that don't have a military background. Right.
100%. I mean, as long as.
Okay. Just want to make that clear. So what I hear.
Rob, it's a mindset, right? It has nothing to do with where you've been. It has to do with who you are.
100%. And believe me, my son's in the Marine Corps as we speak. So I get it. Many people from my family are in the military. So grateful and appreciative for what they all do. And we're kind of getting off a little bit on the military, but the reality is they get prepared in a way that the average American does not. That's just the way it is, right? But what I hear you saying is that by bringing people in, because I'm trying to get to the bottom a little bit of why you choose to do W-2 and not 1099, and it allows you the opportunity to sort of create a culture that people either adhere to or don't. You're going to get more buy-in from a W-2 employee who feels more kind of connected to the organization.
Right.
And realistically, you have more, for lack of a better word, authority over that person's work product and work effort, right? So probably all those reasons.
And there's we try to make it so there's no misunderstandings. I also need, I look at that pilot in our stable as, a resource or an asset of ours as well. So if I get a call like I did today from a customer that says, I've got 26,000 acres that I need flown and blah, blah, blah. I might need to take you off of that job and put you over here. And I need you to understand that, that's where I need you, or that's where the company needs you right now. We're still small and growing. I don't want to make it sound like we have all the answers. But I know that in 2025, we're putting an employee stock option purchase plan in place. We're offering benefits. We want our people to be part of the show too, right?
Yeah.
We've had situations too where guys they're great pilots, but they just don't represent us well. They're just maybe it's maybe it's personal hygiene or just, presentation. But I don't have much tolerance for that.
Nor, you know what, Yoshi, nor should you. That is okay, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's clear that there's invariably, there's a greater degree of seriousness and attention to detail from employees. That doesn't mean that there's great pilots that are contractors that do great work, but it's just a different paradigm, and it's not the paradigm that you've chosen.
And it's not, I mean, in fact, you introduced me to somebody that we just, it wasn't a fit, right? The guy's a great pilot. He's a good student. He was a student of yours, and it just, for whatever reason, he couldn't be away from home for more than a week at a time. And, sometimes we need that. And so that was an issue for him. And hey, no problem. We fly all over the place. I mean, this past summer, we were in 49 of the 50 states.
Wow. Yeah. I did not know
plus
that.
A couple of foreign countries.
Okay.
Yeah, we're all over the place. Now, if I have jobs in a place where these guys live, for sure that I want to give them work in their environment.
Of course.
So, it's tricky though, because like I said, I've got guys in Washington that might work in Florida, and I've got guys in North Carolina that I need in Northern California today. And, so it's moving those pieces around, and that's what Alan does.
Yeah. That's his gig.
And he just yells at me because I sold a job in Northern California. Like, what are you doing? Yeah.
I'm just bringing in revenue. That's all I'm
job.
doing. So let's shift gears just a little bit. In terms of what's happening in the industry as it relates to manufacturers, and I think we're all overtly aware at this point of DJI and even Autel potentially, and then according to the latest, anybody that is licensed by either of those, right? So let's just kind of call it what it is, and then let the listener and viewer decide what they want to do with that. That's what it says. How are you dealing with that? How are you planning for that? Or are you not too concerned about that yet? What are your thoughts on that?
Rob, I flip-flop.
I hear heartburn.
I flip-flop. I'm a flopper.
Yeah.
On one hand, I want to go out and buy every piece of DJI equipment that I possibly can, praying and hoping that they'll grandfather in everything that's in the air right now. And I really believe that that's true. I think
seems to be the case, at least for a little while.
300, 350, from an inspection, that's the go-to bird. At least in the near future, there's not much is going to change there. It can't. The American ecosystem just isn't anybody besides China isn't where DJI is, or Autel.
Yeah.
I mean, Autel, Autel could be supplanted, but they make a great drone, right? And great flight controller. Mm-hmm. I love Autel Explorer. It's a great piece of software. And it controls the drone very well. And, you bundle that with FLIR software on the thermal side, and it's like, wow, this is a pretty decent package. But
so let me ask you
Deploy,
this.
for example, doesn't support Autel. I don't know why they never did. It's just kind of a weird thing.
Just numbers, I'm sure. Just numbers.
Yeah. We've invested in some non-Chinese, American-made stuff. We've tested a bunch of it. At this point, I really don't want to pick on any manufacturers. I don't want to mention any by name. But it's not good. It's really not good. Even the guys that are claiming and having these big, multi-million-dollar show off our new dock and whatever, I can't even get one for another year. Why are you? Who's this marketing for? For your shareholders? Like, I don't. It doesn't help me today. Okay, I need to know what can I put in the air today. I know you guys like the free fly stuff. And we do too. I wish their legs were a little thicker. They didn't look so sticky, but that's another story. I love the way it's
fair enough. I'm sure they're listening to the positive feedback.
It flies well. It folds up very nicely because our guys are in the field. We want to be able to crank that. I like the way it folds into a little square. It's kind of cute,
That's what we're all going for. The cuter, the better.
It's cute. No, but it's got to fit in the back seat of a truck, like that's kind of where we're at with that. It has to carry a reasonably sized payload. I mean, we're in the Permian Basin here in Texas. We're flying M600 Pros, those big 6-rotor monsters that, because we have a giant payload. It's like a 7 or 8 kilogram payload. It's big. I don't think it's going to work. It might work on the Astro. Wait a minute, the Alta.
On the Alta X, that would carry it. Yeah, that would carry it.
But we haven't looked at that yet. We're looking. We're sort of waiting to see. The cream rises to the top. And I like the way the Inspired Flight looks, and I like their height. Mm-hmm. They don't fly very well. Did I say that out loud?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'm afraid you did. I'm afraid you did. Hey, people come here to Ask Drone U or to Drone U's podcast for the truth.
Yeah, so Yoshi, I mean, and that's only from the very limited exposure I've had to it, and from what my my colleagues in the industry that have tested them, an honest result. We were mandated on a project to fly Sony Air Peaks because of the camera. And it was just such a botch. Everything about it was bad. They wanted fixed cameras when we could have used Zoom cameras. They wanted, a non-Chinese drone, and they went with Sony, which was sort of. They've had a couple of iterations since we started, but it hasn't been great. Yeah,
that's boy. There's so many things, so many rabbit trails I want to go down. We're already getting long here, but I hope it's interesting. There's so many things I think we could probably talk for hours. But so let's just say this, what is your favorite aircraft? If you had to pick one that would be the most versatile to do the greatest amount of work that it could accomplish. And I know it's hard for you because you have the 4 verticals.
My favorite bird to operate is
productively.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll do it that way. The M300, M350. It's so versatile. It's so accurate. It's so reliable. It's the right size for bigger infrastructure stuff. The M3E is super versatile for everything else, but it's also limited because you can't change payloads, right? You can only, it's just a camera. We do have M3Ts. But my very favorite bird to fly is the M30. It's in between. The camera has got basically the same specs as it's an H20, and it just performs and stays in the air for a long time. And I just love that.
That's awesome.
I love that bird. That's my favorite.
That's what let's be real. I don't fly as much as you guys or Paul, but I think Paul might say that he might say the Inspire too. But the M30 is right there because we have one of those, and it's funny. We don't do a lot of work with it, but it's fun to fly, and it takes some pretty amazing pictures.
We use it for blade inspection a lot, and then we use it for transmission also. When we're out in your neck of the woods there in northwest Colorado, up on those on the plains with these giant transmission towers. You want something that's going to handle the wind really well. That M30 will do a perfect inspection in 38 mile an hour winds. It's incredible. Yeah. The Sony is great in the wind too. It's just everything else about it isn't.
Well, but doesn't it have like an 8-minute flight time?
11.
Well, but in the wind, it goes down to 4. No, I don't know what's the number.
And that's tough on a 17-minute inspection,
Yeah, exactly. I hope they get that figured out because I think that drone has some possibilities.
They've got a high-capacity battery now that helps a little bit. It's just, it's a cool drone for like cinematography, and it's got the Grimsby mount, and you can put pretty well any camera on there. I didn't like some of the things that I think they're fixing now, so I don't want to talk about the real bad stuff, but like end of day, like the RTK data, why is it not on the picture? I have to like run this whole program to push the data from the RTK SD to what? Like it doesn't even make any sense,
Speaking of that, no, that's a great point. But speaking of that, have you done anything with the Wingtra 1? Do you do any fixed wing
Not
stuff?
really, no, but I've heard it's cool.
Okay. No, it's super cool. That might be one for you guys to take a look at. If you do, let me know. We have the hookup for you.
Yeah, I've got a big mapping thing coming up overseas, so it's huge, like hundreds of thousands of square kilometers.
Oh, you're going to need a Wingtra, if not an airplane.
Sure. Yeah,
I don't know. So a Wingtra can probably do in a given flight. Forgive me, Trent, if I'm misquoting, but 1,100 acres on one flight.
And if I'm not mistaken, it's got a phase 1 payload, or it can have one, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a pretty powerful machine. It's pretty impressive.
Your listeners know, but that's sort of like a super high-end camera that it's not your father's camera.
No. And anyways, the workflow is super simple, but we can talk about that later. And I mean it. If you need a hookup on that, let me know. In terms of training, when somebody comes into your organization as a pilot, what does that look like? How important is that? And do you see a direct correlation between the training they get and their effectiveness as a pilot?
Great questions. I don't hire pilots. I hire personalities. Okay?
Okay.
I can teach a monkey Mode 2. Okay?
Yeah.
It's not that hard. I mean, if you ever played a video game, if you ever, stick time is important and you get a feel for it, but that comes in days, not years, right? It's not that complicated of a process.
Right.
That being said, I still want guys that are 107 and, have a little bit of stick time and at least own a drone. But it's more about attitude and personality. And, we want that sort of soldier mentality, whether you have military background or not, just that, that drive.
Yeah. I like that switch.
We do break out our training. So we do obviously, stick training. But all of our training is in the field. So if if we hire you and we say, okay, we need you on an oil and gas methane detection, you're going to shadow somebody probably for, we'll just call it a whole, an inspection set, right? Like there's 300 wells, whatever. You're going to be sort of the VO, or you're going to watch for a day. You're going to maybe fly one or two of them. You're going to watch the upload process at the end of the day. You're going to be out on deployment with that person learning for the first deployment before you sort of ever go out on your own. And then we internally will certify you as, okay, you've passed the Alamo Airborne certification for oil and gas or methane detection.
Right.
We also use a tool, Air Data. I don't know if I can mention them or not, but I did.
Yeah, no, they do great
We're
stuff.
an enterprise user, so we track all of our flights in there. What we really love about it is that we can now go back to Rob Burdick's flight on October 14th and see that he was heavy on the sticks when he was going from one asset to the other, or, what are you wasting your time going here and back there? So we use it as sort of a tailboard or a lessons learned. We'll go back and sit down with our pilot and go, hey, you did a great job on these collections. What happened here? Let's look at this flight. And that's an invaluable tool. We also track our certification in that same tool. And we track all of like the whole company's flight, so we can see, and then we use it as a marketing tool. So I can go to like our website and go, oh, we've done 15,000 flights, or like whatever the number is. I don't know what the number is.
Sure.
But it's and it tracks every drone that we use. It also gives us it also does all of our maintenance. We can set like, okay, every 20 cycles, make sure we visually inspect a battery or like whatever those things happen to be. So we use that as much as possible. We also have some other tools that our project management team uses, and they're based off of Airtable, which is kind of a database. But we, so we do all of our check-ins, our checkouts, all of our uploads kind of happen in our own little tool.
Yeah.
We've got something called Airborne Central that we sort of use internally. It's not quite ready for our customers to see, but we use it internally. and it's a way for us to communicate and a way for us to know what's going on. But there's a ton of different tools that we use that we have to train our guys on. One of the tools is Onyx Hunt. Okay, and it's an off-the-shelf. If you're an outdoorsy guy, you're smiling, and obviously you've been on a hike or two. So we'll go out and map the whole basin, and here's the most efficient route to go from pad to pad to go do these collections.
Yeah.
So then Rob as a new pilot can come on and go, oh, okay, I just follow the path, and the learning curve gets cut way down. So
yeah, it's about efficiency.
Yeah, it is. And every minute that you're not being efficient or not flying or not working is costing money. That's the name of the game, is to make money, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love it. I think that's great. And no, we have talked a lot about that kind of pilot data or flight data that can be super valuable if used in a way that sounds like the way you're using it, because, and you can get bogged down in it if you're not careful, but if you kind of know how to look and what you're looking for and use some of the analytical tools to find those anomalies, it can be super powerful. Yeah,
it's been tough to figure out what tools to use. I'm not gonna lie, that's been a big challenge. Like I used to use like this little geo tracker thing that would just I could import a KML and like a file of all the locations of, say, the telecom towers, and then as I go to them, I just turn them off. I don't need to do those anymore. And it was a good personal tool, but I couldn't connect to anybody. I couldn't let my project guys know that I've done these 6 towers or whatever it is. So
it's not scalable.
Right. So then we have to figure out, well, what if we use this, or what if we build our own, or is Google Earth going to help us with that? So, I mean, we're KML heavy, right? Like, especially in the oil field, like we've got 600 assets to inspect. Well, which ones have already been done? And we've got 3 crews out there. Like, how do you know? You're purple, you're green, you're red. So it's a lot of management on the back end, much more than just sort of like, I don't know. Let me make an assumption here for a second. I would assume that the Drone U audience, or a lot of your audience, is sort of independent, single guys that are by themselves running their own drone business. Am I correct in that assumption, or is it more guys?
When you say single guys, you're not saying they don't have girlfriends.
Independent drone operators.
Because I'll be offended if you're saying that. No, I'm kidding. Yes, a lot of smaller drone service providers, and then we also, of course, do have some enterprise customers that listen to the show, and even some federal agencies and so forth. But the primary audience is probably what you're referring to.
It's very hard to do it alone. It is.
At a minimum, you better be a good networker.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the things that we've mentioned on this podcast: sales, technology, bids and insurance, understanding, what tools to use. That's a full-time job for just somebody that's not flying a drone, right?
It is.
So as we grow, and we're not a fat company by any means. Like, I mean, personally, I might have a couple extra pounds on me, but
well, that just means you're living a little.
But we've got full-time project manager. Alan sort of heads up logistics. I don't even know what else to call it. Operations, I guess. We're getting to the point where we need to split out some of the mundane tasks. Dare I call them mundane, because then they come back and bite you. But it's the stuff we talked about, accounting and HR. It gets to be a lot after a while, and then even just managing our flights. We just wrapped up a project with a telecom provider, and the first 60 flights or so, for some reason we weren't tracking what tower we inspected, like just that we did it and it was in their system. So we thought we could get the data from them, quickly realizing we couldn't. And interestingly, now we have a 50-something tower discrepancy with our customer. I mean, and I can't prove that so shame on me, right?
That's frustrating. Yeah, well, sounds like you were pigeonholed a little bit.
That's the reality, though. Like, it's hard. It's hard. It's not an easy thing to do.
Well, there's a lot of great stuff in terms of technology, obviously, coming out in the drone industry. But I'd say we're still sort of in that toddler, maybe a little bit beyond that stage. So there's still a lot of figuring out that's going on, and some great tools already, like an Air Data that was kind of early in. But let's transition again just a little bit, and let's kind of finish with this. From everything that we've talked about, clear there's a lot of opportunity, generally speaking, but there's also a lot of opportunity with what you guys are doing. And so I have a couple of questions with respect to pilots that might be interested in working for Alamo. So number one, just a quick answer. Can somebody be W-2 employed by you and still do other work? Or do you require them to do only work for you? What does that look like?
I don't, you know what, I'm going to keep our guys busy. So I don't know how they would be able to manage that. I'm certainly not opposed to it. I'm a believer that, I'm an entrepreneur myself. I've got plenty of other little side projects going on, but I have a primary focus. And when you are an employee for somebody and an FTE, a full-time employee, you want to be loyal to that person. Loyalty runs deep. And I've got a guy right now that, I was leaning on, and then he told me, well, I can't fly until the weekend. And I'm like, what's going on? Yeah, he got a job. So I don't know what that means. You've got a job. You were working for me. So, I had him he did 7 days on, and then I had him off for 3 days, and then I call him up and he's like, wow. So I don't, he's sort of used to that gig mentality, and that's not what I was looking for. And we had a heart to heart about that. And he decided that he's going to stay a gig worker, and I'm okay with it. I mean, he's still my friend.
Yeah.
But I'm really looking for loyalty and guys that will commit and are willing to really work hard, but the reward is great, right? It's not just, and I don't want to tease anybody, but I'll tell you, my good pilots are making six figures. They're making 110 grand a year, and they go home and sleep and they don't have to worry about payroll. It's not,
and they don't have to worry about getting their next job. Exactly. I mean, there's a lot to that.
But it requires dedication and commitment.
Yeah. Would you say you're looking for pilots all over the country at this point?
100%. Yeah. We've got a couple of really large scale projects coming up, both in telecom and in transmission and in distribution. There's always stuff. We're busy. We got other stuff brewing, but those are the four verticals that we sort of gravitate to. I'm not saying we wouldn't take on another job. Listen, anything at scale. So, and I tell some of our lead sources this as well. Don't bring me a job that's 8 roofs. I don't care if it's in San Antonio or Austin or my own backyard, right? Bring me 800 roofs, and that's a project. I don't care what the asset is. We'll fly anything. I'm not necessarily a snob, and I won't fly real estate. I just need to do it at scale.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
So that leads to the type of person that I'm looking for. I need somebody that understands that scale means get as many as you can today, not just I made my money and I'm going home. It's a little bit different mindset, and I don't know if I'm defining it well on this podcast or not. But
I think it's very clear, and I appreciate what you guys are trying to bring to the industry, because to be real, and this, I'm not saying something you don't know, this is not quite the way the paradigm has been operating from day one, right? And so, but for the person that likes what they're hearing, I think it could be a really cool opportunity. So for that person, if that's you, we're going to have a link. It's either here, or here. That was helpful, huh? We're going to have exactly. I just didn't do here.
Vicinity.
Don't forget to look behind you. we're going to have a link that you can go to and kind of submit your interest, if you will, and then Yoshi and team will take it from there and start a conversation with you.
Yeah, we're constantly hiring. We usually scramble when we have big projects, but we're always interested in guys that meet our criteria or our profile. And you can always hit us up, just alamoairborne.com. You can always feel free to reach out. I'm Yoshi at Alamo Airborne. I read every one of my emails, so I even look in my spam folder occasionally.
You know what? I've gotten into the habit of keeping my spam folder 0. That forces me to check it a couple times a day. Nothing in there. There never is. Takes me about 10 seconds each time. Yeah. It's cleared
well, as soon
up.
as you delete it without looking at them, somebody sent you something that you needed.
Well, I'll hear about it and they'll resend it. I can't worry about that. But you're right. It has happened.
Yeah. So we're excited about this. This growth that we've experienced. We feel very blessed and lucky that we're in an industry that's evolving, and we've been able to sort of stay in it. We've seen some of our competitors kind of go by the wayside, and that's kind of sad to see. We're not the type to sort of celebrate the demise of anybody.
Sure.
We don't know that we have all the answers either. We've been luckier more than unlucky. That's all I can say. And
I can appreciate that.
And we keep the faith in more ways than one.
Absolutely.
So
I hear you. Well said. Yeah. Well said. Well, thank you for your time. I would imagine people will have questions. So again, you can click the link to essentially apply, right? We'll just call it that.
I'm gonna build a little
kind of start that
little form that it'll have like some check boxes or something, and I'll make sure it's on here. And we're just we just want to know that you understand what we're doing and that you meet our profile or our criteria, and that it's a good fit. And then that way we're nobody's wasting anybody's time.
Absolutely. No, but it's a great opportunity for the right person. I think that's become clear, and you've shown that over a long enough period of time to show that it's sticking.
I hope so. We got some fun things coming up too. And the truth is, all this talk about Chinese drones, to me, it's exciting. I get to play with new gadgets. I get to see new stuff.
That's true.
And whenever something like this happens, or when there's sort of a forced change of technologies, I mean, we saw it at like Y2K, for example, or
totally.
Just different ways of doing it. When the MP3 player came out, now I'm dating myself, there's just things that happen in the space that are exciting and new, and a new way of doing things. And people, because of that, are open to these new innovative ways of doing things.
I agree. I've been a part of
embrace it. And
well, you better. Yeah. It's happening. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen whether you embrace it or not, right? And I've been a part of 3 very different industries now. This is my 3rd. And every single one of them had events like this that some people in that industry thought were existential risks, right? And they're not. Especially with something that is as ubiquitous as drones has become. There's too much value to be garnered from what drones can do for society and for the world. We will figure it out. So be a part of the solution and the excitement, or
get out,
or not.
Get out of the way.
You kind of have that choice.
Get out of the way.
Yeah, you have that choice. Exactly.
You said that very well. Like we went through it too. Drones are like ubiquitous. They're not going anywhere. How we control them may change a little bit. But the basic function and what they do is here to stay. Yeah.
Agreed. And here to grow.
Sure.
Right?
Oh yeah.
Here to grow. But well, Yoshi, thank you. Any last words? You get the last words here.
I would say, if there's any advice I could sort of throw out to budding entrepreneurs and drone people, be open, be collaborative, listen, learn from other people's experience, and do as much training as you possibly can. And I happen to know someone that offers some really good drone training right here on camera with me. So
yes, indeed, we feel very good
to know.
Yeah.
Just a very brief personal story. When I first got into drones and I was taking my 107, I made sure that I found a course that wasn't just teaching me to teach the tests. Anybody can pass that test. Come on, it's not that difficult. You know, you might take it 2 or 3 times till you get it, but you know, it's a passable test. What I appreciated about the course I took was that the host of the program or of the training course made it about the industry and what people are doing with drones. And so it was, and that's what the Drone U does. Not to, well, I guess I'm hyping you guys. It is your podcast, right? That's what you guys do, right? You make it real. You make it about what are people really doing here? Yeah, okay, we're flying a cell tower. That's cool. Oh, look, I can do an orbit. Here's how the drone functions. It's not about that. It's about the deliverable and what the customer's going to do with that data.
Yeah, I said you'd get the last word. I'm just going to add this. It's about something you said earlier, and that was when you want to understand the goals of the client, right? That's how you can bring value. And even when you understand the why behind the goal, then you can go out to the job site and you can bring value to that customer they didn't even know they needed or wanted. And that's where you're trying to get, right? And I know that's what you guys aspire to do at Alamo. I think that's pretty awesome. I think it's pretty awesome.